Right.
Swish.
Okay.
Oh, back to the old, kiss me through the screen. Yeah, but we're back to the
grind.
Screen through the screen ways. I don't like it.
Yeah, sadly we cannot be together for much longer. The bunker, it was rumbled, They found us. I don't know how they found us.
We had to evacuate the bunker.
We must have left the door open. The cat got out.
You know what? It was bloody. I don't know who should we blame. It was Giles. It was bloody Giles. Left the door open. Come on, mate.
เพื่อนผมชอบเที่ยวปาร์ตี้คืนหนึ่งแม่งเที่ยวกันเป็น10 ที่มันใส่ฟันทองกันเป็น10 ซี่อยากขอฟันเพื่อนแล้วไปปลดหนี้เบื่อผู้คนชอบแดกดันแดกจนจะโรคจิตมันจะติดฟันพบเจอทีไรอยากรีกมันเดี๋ยวความอิสระจะติดตันนอนแบนเป็นกาเบนปากลมริมเลว
So how to start off this one?
It's your baby, man.
So I'll say welcome back to our listeners. Welcome back, Samai Deng. How do you do?
I'm alright, Chief.
I haven't actually. We've been talking for about 10 minutes now. I haven't addressed the fact that you're wearing like kitten ears.
Oh, I'm wearing cat ears. Yeah.
Yeah. Why is that?
Oh, it just keeps my hair out my face.
Okay, it looks very cute.
Thank you. Woo.
Yeah. Uwu indeed. On a slightly less uwu topic, today we are talking about, well, two things really. We're talking about Thalugaz and Thai trap music. Samai, what do you know about those two things?
Only what you've ever told me.
Yeah, it's not really your area of expertise, is it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Although really where those two things intersect is kind of the Thai underclass. Because so basically I wrote a article a couple years back about the politics of Thai underclass music culture and kind of the political ramifications or the potential political ramifications of it. Have you read it, by the way?
The Thalugaz, I edited it, yeah.
No, the other one, the one I wrote like 2 years ago.
I haven't read it in a while, but when you first sent it to me like a year ago.
Bro, I sent it to you like an hour ago.
Yeah, but I didn't read it because I was like, I remember most of it.
All right, I hope so. Anyway, so I think like we kind of should define what we mean by underclass because it's a bit of a contentious term, isn't it?
Well, it's more of a catch-all term than like say if you just said the word proletariat.
Yeah, I mean, for me, proletariat, I think, is a bigger catch-all term. For me, the underclass is a smaller section of the proletariat, right? So, I think it's like post-Ford. I think it's only like really in post-Fordist economies. So we're talking about like gig economy workers. We're talking about like, people who don't have a regular salary and are kind of just constantly hustling to survive.
Hustlers with a Z. G's and hustlers,
yeah, and
even.
And like, are they people like that? Are they the working class? You know what I mean? It's like when you're...
Well, no, it's... do they own the means of production?
Well, of course not.
Then they are working class.
But what my question is, like, is there a difference between the traditional... Not even the traditional working class, even an abstracted definition of the working class, and I'm specifically talking about Thailand. So, like, we can say, like, a market seller technically is petty bourgeoisie, but obviously we consider them working class.
But then you have to apply the not the Asian, but like not post-colonial either, because it's Thailand, but like the third worldist like lens, in the sense that the structures in Europe aren't going to be the same. So like the small business owner in Thailand is going to be different from the small business owner in California. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, absolutely. So, that's why I wanted to like clarify we're talking about Thailand here. Yeah. So, okay, so my question though is not even that. My question is our conception of the working class in Thailand. Let's clarify that first. So for me, it's the traditional working class, so obviously, people working wage labor jobs in factories or in offices as well, or whatever. And then, even if it's service economy, obviously. And then, on top of that, I would include, like I've said, market sellers, like very, very petty emphasis on the petite bourgeoisie.
Petite.
I would definitely include them. And then I feel like there is a class below that because, well, yeah, within that, okay, so within that big, working class, I feel like there is another group of people who are the underclass, or maybe like subaltern, if you want to use that word.
What would you describe the relationship then? How would you describe the exploitation then? Like, is there like a super exploitation?
Almost, in
Right.
terms of they can't even get a stable shitty job. They can't even break through into being, for example, like a mechanic that fixes motorbikes. Like, you can't even get that job. You can't even get a job working at 7-Eleven, something like that.
Okay, well, I mean, I would argue that the 7-Eleven example is much more severe than the mechanic one, because one requires like a little bit of knowledge on training and like tools and stuff.
I'm just thinking about like minimum wage.
Yeah, I know.
What I'm saying is they can't even break through into minimum wage.
Well, I would still say that that's like, the working class. So.
No, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah,
I'm saying
but
it is the working class, but within the working class, there's something.
Okay.
There's also this category of people. I'm not saying they're their own class necessarily.
Oh yeah,
I'm
no,
saying,
I know.
like, it's
I would say I would go with category more than anything.
Okay, sure.
Yeah.
Oh, this is tricky, man.
Wow.
So the people I'm talking about are typically people who have been to prison before. That's a really good example. So you're going to struggle to get a job at 7-Eleven or something like that. Or people who haven't graduated high school. People from very, 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 very dire economic circumstances. And a lot of these people are young people, and because of the way the Thai economy changed in its structure to become this kind of post-Fordist gig economy focused almost model that we have now, then I feel like this affliction isn't happening so much with the older generations, with the kind of 40 plus, maybe even 30 plus years old people who managed to break through into that wage economy. No, what's the word? Typical wage labor jobs.
Yeah.
Does this make sense? So I'm kind of
I know what you mean.
Yeah, so I'm kind of talking about people who are under 30, typically, probably have a record with the police, a criminal record, and struggle to get a regular wage job.
So this is also additionally an episode on prisons.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah. So people like this, they're typically doing the jobs like the Grab delivery driver, Food Panda delivery driver, or they're at workers' camps as well. Even though that's technically wage, regular steady wage labor, it's not always. There's a lot of issues there. I don't know what other drug. I mean, here's a question I was thinking about earlier: are drug dealers petite bourgeoisie? Like even low level.
Like on the street level, like street level drug dealers.
Yeah.
Would street level drug dealers be petty bourgeois? Well, you don't. Well, not necessarily, right? Because think about it, right? You don't own all the drugs you're selling because you get it from a supplier, or like the bigger drug dealer in the area. Right.
So it's more like the market seller.
Yeah, exactly. I would say, yeah. Drug dealers are common.
But then I would say because of the illegality of it, I would probably factor in these people as being in that underclass.
Yeah, because then you're oppressed by the state because it's the legal thing. Yeah.
So the reason I'm bringing all this up is because of Thalugaz, because I think Thalugaz, these are the people who make up Thalugaz, and I don't think we've said this yet, but Thalugaz is the new protest group that has formed in the past month in Dindang. No relation to us, which is like really weird, by the way, that's happened, and that's not even where we got the name Dindang from. But
we spell it differently
in the Dindang neighborhood.
Reasons.
Yeah, in the Dindang neighborhood in Bangkok in the past month, there's been a lot of very intense fighting with the police, and it's very different to the rest of the kind of democracy movement, whatever you want to call it, so far in terms it's much more frequent, so it's almost every night. Now it's calmed down a little bit at the time of recording, but for a while it was every single night, and it was straight up like like before with the other protests, if there was violence, they would always say, we wait for the police to shoot first or whatever, to strike first. And Thalugaz are like, no, we will strike first because we've, whatever. We'll get into why.
Yeah.
So, and the type of people who are coming out are quite different from the other people who were coming out in the previous protests. And I would say that these people typically fit that underclass category. So, okay, so we've kind of established the underclass category, if you like. And yeah, so I wrote this other article a couple years back about the politics of Thai underclass musical culture. And in the article, I got kind of one thing right and one thing wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And what was right was that this young underclass weren't being represented by the, I'm doing big air quotes here, radical political newcomers who at the time were Future Forward Party and Rap Against Dictatorship. And I argued that Thai trap music gives a far better insight into underclass grievances with the state, with society, and that it has a far more radical message than the, aforementioned supposed political radicals of like Thanaton and Future Forward and Rap Against Dictatorship.
It's radical by different standards, because like
it's radical.
Yeah. It's because like Thanaton, calling Thanaton a radical is like, but that's what like someone in the government would say. But for us, he is sort of reminiscent of maybe like a soft center left of the Thai radical movement as a whole. Like,
even then, I wouldn't say radical movement.
No, I wouldn't say anything radical at all. But but no, the folks you're talking about, and the trap music, it's like you mentioned, it's like a phleng per chiwit. It's like a like a song for life, or art for life, or music for life.
But the way that radicalness is articulated as well is completely different from that kind of the ones we were talking about before, like Thanaton and Rap Against Dictatorship. Because
there's a lot more of there's the earnestness in these messages. It's more it connects to more people than like words in a speech, which are sort of about policy. I don't know.
I wonder. I honestly don't know.
I feel like a description of life as it is, and people going like, "Yeah, that is exactly what is going on," and that we feel like the same way. Is probably going to be more, it's going to be better received than some guy in a different place. Talking about
with a suit on, talking about policy. I completely agree. However, my argument was that certain, and even then I'm only talking about a certain subsection of Thai trap music, but what I'm saying is in that certain subsection that we're talking about, it lacked a revolutionary message. It was very good at articulating phleng phuea chiwit, which I don't think we've said is kind of like an art for life, music for life, kind of like socialist realism, telling real stories about what life is like for the proletariat. But with the old phleng chiwit of the old music for life of the 60s, the 70s, that had a revolutionary message with it, right? Like Kongak Kwai by Carawan. It's a really perfect example of this. So we're kind of going all over the place here a little bit, but I just want to talk about So I'm quickly going to talk about Kongap Kwai because it's a really great example, because that's a perfect example of music for life in terms of, and it's the most famous one as well, in terms of it starts off by describing the life of the peasant farmer and the buffalo, and then it builds on that and it gets to the point of like, hey, you know what? Let's do a fucking revolution. Which is kind of the end message.
To take the guns into the field.
Yeah. And I think that this subsection of Thai trap music, it does that first part, but it doesn't do the second part. Or it didn't at the time of writing. Yeah, go on.
It's sort of like the Marx thing, which is like philosophers have only interpreted the world, but the point, however, is to change it, right? Or however he says.
Yeah, I guess it
so
kind of
so
is.
it's like we've done the description, but there's nothing from the description. Nothing arises from the description. The implications of it haven't been discussed. It's just been talking about things as it is, which is how.
Yeah.
So this, would you say this is how this connects to the other sort of main important topic of this episode, Thalugaz?
Exactly.
Right, there we go.
So now I think maybe it's early days, but it looks like somebody maybe is starting to articulate this political message from, and I'm not even necessarily saying it's because of the musical culture.
But it's we're focusing on the fact that this is the underclass.
Yes.
So you're saying
starting to articulate
for a large period of time,
consciousness.
for a large period of time, it's been, we recognize the situation within ourselves as the underclass. However, there's been no like concerted effort to, you know, turn this into revolutionary activity. However, now within the underclass, you know, there is this new group. So the trap music and this new protest group, they're just signals and indications of what is going on in the underclass.
Potentially.
Yes. Okay. I understand.
I'm not nailing anything to the wall.
Oh no, of course we're not
it's
Martin
very early
Luthering.
days.
We're not Martin Luthering.
Yeah. Jesus, man, we kind of just said the whole episode in about 10 minutes, but maybe, I don't know, how do you want to try and sort of dig deep?
Well,
should we go into the article?
Yeah, go through some details, because we've done this. We've done like a thesis, so we could just flesh it out a bit if you want.
So to start, I should probably like name a couple of the artists that I was referencing at the time. My personal favorite is Ju, which is, you know, Ju 4E, that is, which is like a genitalia, is what that means, by the way.
To use the scientific term.
Yeah, and also I mentioned Young Bong. Now it's interesting because like Young Bong have kind of gone in the other direction where they've kind of been commercialized a lot more. Whereas Ju hasn't at all. And so both of what and also 19 Tiger. And so what these artists had in common is that they were making very kind of lo-fi trap music. They were very, how to say, like anti-hyso. And this is something I wanna kind of touch on, which is this kind of anti-hyso element to this kind of trap music, which is like, oh, we look like shit, we dress like shit, our music even sounds like it's quite unpleasant to listen to, you know, maybe from like in layman's terms, like it's quite grating. It's very antithetical to that kind of hyso type
Polished.
Yeah, like polished, well produced. If you listen to kind of high soul type music, what's popular now and has been for a while is that kind of like acoustic guitar, but it's like very nicely produced.
And it's in like the Lacan on the TV. It's like just like the basically it's an intro to any of the soaps. yeah,
and it's always a love song or something like that.
Yeah,
literally always.
Yeah.
Like, you know what? Just on a quick side note, I was driving with a friend on a long drive once, and we were listening to the radio, and we were doing like, okay, how many songs? Because we were doing like a 7-hour drive. We were like, how many songs in a row is it going to be a love song? Literally,
they're
everyone.
all. That's,
literally,
dude, the whole country, man, is obsessed.
Yeah. Well, whereas this kind of music that I'm talking about is not that at all.
Yeah, exactly.
It's very. It describes. You know, it's about lifestyle. Let's be honest.
Yeah.
It's about having a rather unpleasant life, getting fucked up by the police, getting robbed, maybe robbing people, doing drugs, maybe selling drugs. It's quite, you know, frankly, it's not that different to the kind of music that, to the kind of like Western hip hop or Western trap or grime for me, but in a Thai context, it hits different. You know what I mean?
Because there's it's compared to these other places that, like, that you mentioned, there's still a lot more musical variance. Like even in even in what's like generally listened to by a large portion of the population, these topics that you've mentioned that are mentioned in Thai trap will still like be spoken about. However, in Thai trap, in the Thai music sort of scene as a whole, they're not touched upon at all. So it's because of the difference in what topics are covered by which genres or which parts of the music scene. It is very significant and
it stands out.
Yeah, it stands out. Yeah, that's what I meant to say. Yeah, that's right.
And I would say though, although there is a but, the way it's articulated,
right,
which is in this kind of realist style of articulation, is quite similar to like
how would you describe that? As just like
it's very matter of fact.
Yeah, straightforward. Not really doing the whole metaphor thing.
No, not very poetic at all.
Yeah,
Yeah. So I think it's, and like I say, a lot of the music focuses on lifestyle. And again, this lifestyle is not at all aspirational, and it's very anti-aspirational. It's very, it recognizes that it's that underclass category. This isn't directly articulated, right? But you can tell that they recognize they're part of that underclass category, and they're not aspiring to sort of climb up in social status towards that kind of middle class, upper middle class.
Right.
And that is articulated not just through music. It's articulated by the way these people look, by the way these people behave. Like I talk in the article about like having face tattoos and dreadlocks and shit like that, because there's also this element in Thai high society, which is looking clean, being well presented, and this is. And that's really, really important. Like I maybe like Western audiences won't necessarily understand that well, and this goes all the way back to like schools and having to have a certain haircut and having to have all of your clothes at a certain lengths and blah blah blah. Like being antithetical to that is quite radical.
Yeah.
Even in later years, even as an adult.
These are very strong. This country is very like heavy on its norms and its and its customs in terms of like appearance, mannerisms, behavior, that kind of thing. So when anything that's sort of like outside of it isn't necessarily like beaten back because of the whole like looking down and not around kind of Buddhist mentality, but at the same time there is that judgment which is going on in every mother's head.
It's very strong.
Yeah. On Facebook,
and I compare I compare it to like punk music in the West. This is an obvious comparison.
Okay.
However, punk was quite easily absorbed. This is kind of the Mark Fisher stuff, right?
True.
It's like absorbed into mainstream culture, like repackaged and sold back to you, and it's kind of normalized, and it's made to be kind of clean and consumable. It was quite easy to do that with punk, in the West. And I'm saying that's happening now. That's happening with Thai trap music.
You mentioned because there's one guy, Young Bong. Yeah.
No, Young Om.
You
Sorry,
said
Young
Young
Bong.
Bong.
But first, I want to talk about Young Om.
Oh, okay.
Because he's a really good example of this.
Yeah.
Which is that, like his first song, I would say, he is like a good example, or a kind of half decent example of that kind of aesthetic that I was talking about. And within the space of 1 year, literally, he was put straight through the washing machine, and he came out the other side as a really mainstream guy who's selling like fucking Pepsi on TV. It happened real quick. So it does happen. You have to find like the really radical elements of this culture to find its kind of heart. Its non-sellout heart. I don't want to do any of this fucking like sellout.
Well, yeah, there's no gatekeeping here.
I don't want to do that because fuck that shit. But it is interesting that this culture can be washed, cleaned out, and sold back to mass audiences quite easily. I
mean, I'm sure everything can to some degree.
Everything can, but I do think there are those who.
But no, as long as there are people who are like within each of these musical elements, as long as there are people who are like true to their values or whatever, then they're not going to get washed out.
No, and that kind of leads me to Young Bong, who I mentioned earlier. Like, I mentioned him as an example of one of these quite, I don't know, hardcore, radical, whatever you want to call it, artists, and I think Young Bong have kind of been washed quite a bit since I wrote the article 2 years ago. So yeah, it definitely happens.
Middle-aged Bong.
And so but then you've got people like Jewel, you've got people like maybe Liberate the People, who we'll talk about later.
Yeah.
And 19 Tiger to a degree, and I mean there's a lot more. Oh yeah, and there's also a Demon Nixon as well, who you can't wash him out. But yeah, what I kind of argued is that we're going back to like 2019 here. So Rap Against Dictatorship has come out, and everybody's really gripped by them, and Future Forward is on the rise, and there's kind of this. Well, actually, this was just after the elections, and everyone was still really hard for them, and I argued that these people are being described in the media, in politics, as political radicals, and I'm saying that no, this is not. Maybe, yeah, no, like you said earlier, Samai, like this is not. I don't see this as radical at all.
Yeah.
But it's very well articulated.
Yeah.
Like when you listen to Rap Against Dictatorship, it's very, very well articulated.
Well, I would say that, I would say radical, meaning that it's actually a call for action as well, right? But if there's no call for action, I wouldn't exactly put that attribute that word to it.
Yeah, and like, but exactly, and it's like the way it articulates this kind of frustration, which is felt by predominantly young middle class Thai people with university degrees in social science or in art, who can very clearly see this kind of like institutionalized nationalism, these hierarchies, issues with the police and monarchy, and then like Future Forward and Rap Against Dictatorship, and Tamasat, and to a degree like Free Youth as well, and Dao Din tapped into those demographics very well, right? But that scared the ruling class, right? It did. They tried to ban Rap Against Dictatorship, they banned Future Forward Party, but I just want to quote from here, from my article, because I quite like this bit. I said, like, hovering below this well-educated and articulated vision of society exists its radical underclass cousin, who holds no university degree, owns no shirts and no shoes, whose views of the world cut far deeper into the nation's heart, to its systematic oppression, exploitation, and corruption. This is a demographic that may not have the vocabulary or means to directly express itself. Their disdain for the dominant high society culture is self-evident through their lifestyle, for in Thailand there exists very little means of protest, other than to get face tattoos, take drugs, and make trap music. Right?
Yeah. I mean, it makes sense, because it's like, to mix metaphors, the person who gets the short end of the short stick is going to know oppression, exploitation, and corruption at its very face. But, because of that, simultaneously, that means that they lack the ways in which to deal with it, or to articulate it, right?
In a way that the middle class people can understand.
Yeah, so it's ironic, is it not, that the people who can talk about the problems that exist in society are the people who have experienced fewer problems in society.
Yeah, I see exactly what you're saying. Yeah. And then I go on to say, like, safe to say these people are not Future Forward's demographic. To them, a more liberalised society offers little in the way of change from their economic and social deprivation. As such, there has been no outreach from Future Forward to engage with them, or vice versa.
Well, I mean, I don't think the clean reputation in 2019 of Future Forward would have been helped.
No, not at the time. And even now, like, we'll get onto Thalugaz in a bit, but like, people are very wary to associate with Thalugaz because they do not have a clean reputation at all.
Again, I know this is sort of straying away for like a couple seconds, but I don't understand this obsession with the reputation thing, because who are you trying to appease? Like, is it the middle class?
Voice TV.
Voice TV. No, because like, is it the middle class? Because they just sit out for the most part. Like,
I don't know if that's strict. I don't think that's fair.
Let me.
Yeah, go on.
What I mean by middle class, upper middle class in Bangkok. Okay. Can we?
Yeah.
Right.
I think there is a need to appease those people. You know, you see it all over the world.
No, yeah, but like at the same time, if everyone was just like, well, we don't really care about what 12% of the population thinks. You see what I mean?
I know, I agree, but I think what's always the case, and this is everywhere in the world, is that 12% of people very much
in charge
are
of
the media.
Yeah,
no, they're the media.
The media.
And then it looks like that's a far bigger demographic than it is.
Right,
Like in the UK, right? It's like Guardian writers are the perfect, analogy.
That's a good point. That's a good point.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm just...
Yeah, fuck the Guardian.
It's because I'm a left-com, is it? Oh.
Anyway, so then, I make the argument that, while the sound of the music is very different, this is very similar to phleng, phuea, chiwit of the 60s and 70s, but without that revolutionary message. And I also said that, like a lot has changed for the working class, for the underclass, if you like, since that 1970s. Like there's this greater sense of kind of nihilism and despair in the music today.
Yeah.
And I argue that is partly due to Thailand's prison population, fourth highest in the world for incarceration rate. I would also argue that, the cultural influence of like globalization has shifted to this more nihilistic ideology. Because it's being, you're importing other musical styles, like for example, like XXXTentacion is very popular among people like this. So Suicide Boys, very popular among these artists.
What I'd also add is that in the 60s and 70s, capitalism was still not set in stone. Because there was
this is the Fisher thing again.
Yeah, there was still that left wing sort of hopefulness going around, but now because of the massive air quotes failure of socialism and the left, and this implementation of neoliberalism and capitalist realism, obviously, R.I.P. There is that now. There is no hopefulness. There is only dejected people feeling
lost futures,
that the world is going to be shite forever. Hence the nihilism.
That's something I literally went on to say as well.
I told you I read it. I
mean, well, I was saying, like, you can look at what happened last time. There was a large uprising of the working classes. There was this bloody civil war and a communist insurgency that was completely defeated. And I'm saying that's why Thanatorn is so appealing to the middle classes, because it's a society where, people are a little nicer, the banks are...
But we don't get around to the bloodshed.
Yeah, and there's no bloodshed, right?
Yeah.
And, that middle class has too much to lose right now. Whereas for the underclass or the working class, I don't know what you want to call them, they don't really have anything to lose. And you can see that with Thalugaz.
Yeah.
And we'll talk about them later.
I have one thing. Whilst we're still on the music, I have one suggestion. Con Kap Kwai trap remix.
Whoa, that sounds really cringe, but yeah.
All I'm saying is that there's a market for it.
I see that.
Us.
Okay, I'm just gonna float past that. I won't cut it. Don't worry. So like, and then now we get to like my final paragraph where maybe I got it wrong. I'm just gonna read it. I said, While future forward and rap against dictatorship take the plaudits for being the radical new face of Thai politics, this underclass culture will inevitably continue to be maligned and ignored until it becomes normalized and mainstreamed for the middle classes to consume. Again, I'm kind of half right there. But then I said, as a political base, they will continue to be overlooked and suffer from no political representation. So, maybe that brings us on to Thalugaz. Yeah?
Yeah.
Thalugaz, they are this new protest group in the Dindang area of Bangkok, very young, working class, maybe underclass if you want to use that word. And I interviewed them a few days ago, or at least I interviewed one of the lead coordinators and the admin of their social media.
Based on the interview and some coverage, we can understand that they're a lot more radical in terms of action, and also in
Their
terms
tactics.
Tactics, and in terms of ideology, or whatever you would consider their sort of outlook.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to say about their ideology.
They reference Kropotkin, and
the guy I interviewed,
the coordinator, the person you interviewed, and so the question then becomes, how representative of the rest of the group is this one individual?
Frankly, not really, in terms of actually having read, political texts or idea or.
But at the same time, like a large percentage of what I understand from reading and speaking to you, a large percentage of what they're doing is like pretty intuitive via lived experience.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, and which
again it's that thing of not being able. Yeah, go on.
You can't articulate, but you can't act. But you can do what you know, and this is what they know. Well, not like yeah, that's right.
So let's jump into the interview here. So the protests in the Thalugaz, the protests in that Dindang area started because this is all according to the guy we interviewed, by the way. So they started because, as he said, working class people felt excluded by the more mainstream protest groups. So that's Thammasat, Dowdin, and even our friends at Free Youth. And that's mostly because what he kept reiterating was they promote this non-violent means of resistance, means of protest. And as he said, that's not enough. We need to do violence to the police, to the state. And that's how Thalugaz was kind of born. So they started talking to people in their neighborhood, whether that's the kind of young people who are actually going to go out and fight the police, or if it's just local people trying to get their support. They started social media pages. And as he said, a lot of people in the neighborhood have fought with the government before. A lot of them are former red shirts.
Yeah.
And that's the older generation. This younger generation, they're learning from the red shirts how to fight the police, right? And that's where it comes into, it's kind of hard to say about their ideology if a lot of them are red shirts, because frankly, Thaksin is not a very radical theory of change or Thai ideology or whatever you want to call it. I mean, the guy said it really well, I think. He said, politically, the way they're politicized is like, he described them as being like water. He said that a few times. Like, they're very politically transient. Like, the way he said it was like, they really don't care who the prime minister is. They just want to have better lives.
Yeah. Yeah. Which I think is like, that is a, what's a radical, but that's like a fresh stance to take in the sense that, like, you can look at alright, we'll take a Western example, right? Like the whole Biden-Trump thing, right?
Yeah.
It's like, oh, well, the president's this, the president's that. It's like, well, what about their actual government?
Well, it shows that they have a material understanding of politics rather than just cultural.
Precisely, right? So, they're actually concerned with the effects of governance as opposed to what governance sort of projects or does on the surface level.
Yes,
Yeah, and again, there is probably a relationship between that and the way in which they had become, politically educated or educated, via that experience at the end of the fucking stick.
Well, yeah, and that's exactly what I was going to bring up next, which is their relationship with the police. I want to read this quote directly because I think it's quite important. Well, basically, I said like, "What's life like in Dindang?" And I asked like, what's your relationship like with the police?
Yeah.
He said, "It's a slum. It's horrible. We are oppressed people. The police are like a mafia that we have to live under.
Yeah.
They take everything we have. They dominate us, and we have to totally obey them. They're the main problem in the area. Everyone hates them. It's like within the neighborhood, we're living in a totally corrupt mafia-run police state." So that when that's your relationship with the state,
That's the country, man.
how you mean? Oh,
Yeah.
no, I disagree. I think that there are these enclaves like
Right.
Dindang, like Klong Toy.
Well, no, there's
And
where it's
plenty more.
like pretty lawless to the point where the law becomes like some form of, as you say, mafia organization. Well, not law. Hang on, I've worded that whole poorly.
Yeah, I don't like how the words.
Let me backtrack to explain what I meant. What I mean is like there are places where institutions are so weak that there is one strong institution which then becomes this sort of center for corruption because everything goes through it.
Right.
And that's the police in this area and
Yeah.
areas alike.
Yeah.
Is that, can we...
Yeah, I see
we
what
run
you're
with that,
saying. I
yeah.
see what you're saying. And it is like that, like again, this definitely isn't just a Thai thing. That there
Yeah,
are
for sure,
plenty
for
of
sure.
places in the world
Exactly.
where there's technically it's within one country, but the relationship towards the state in different areas of that country are completely different, and one rule, one set of laws for them, one set of laws for us, right?
Yeah, that's where I was going with the law.
And I think that is the case throughout the whole of Thailand. Like there's been stuff like the Red Bull guy, killing people and getting away with.
Well, there was this guy that killed
Joe Ferrari.
Yeah, Joe Ferrari.
Yeah. There is one set of laws for them, one set of laws for us within Thailand as a whole. But I think in this neighborhood, as from what he says, it's much more distinct.
Yeah.
It's much more.
And the thing is,
Yeah.
because everything that you talk about, everything that we've talked about, it doesn't exactly break the barrier of media coverage, because it's like because it's insidious to the point where it's like this is just how it is, and anything that is considered newsworthy, massive air quotes, is something that sort of is like kind of shocking. But people have the expectation in mind that this stuff goes on, so they don't really care to cover it enough.
I don't know about that. I think a lot of people don't know that this goes on.
Really?
Yeah, like in terms of
maybe
like,
I just think everyone's a lot smarter than they really are.
Yeah, honestly, like I don't think it's about smarts even. I think it's like
aware. Big part.
Yeah. Like
Hashtag woke.
I give you an example. When I was like working with refugees in Chiang Mai a lot, and I would talk to my Thai friends.
Yeah.
About what my refugee friends' life was like, or if they met face to face. That was always really weird, because there was such a gulf in terms of like how they understood, the place they lived, and they were living in the same place, they were living in the same neighborhood, but they had like such different lives. They there was like so little cross connection between those two people, sometimes even living on the same street.
In what
they
sense?
had no idea. Okay, so like for example, I had a refugee friend living with me, and we went for dinner with a Thai friend.
Yeah.
And just like watching them talk, like she my Thai friend, she didn't even really know what a refugee was, like she didn't.
Well, yeah, there is that sense that the word refugee isn't incorporated in the constitution or in any of the legal things. So it's not a very talked about thing. Yeah.
But I'm talking like deeper on like a social level. Like she had no idea what some of the problems. She was like, "Oh, wait, what? In your own country, you'll get killed if you stay there? Oh, so you come here? Obviously, that makes sense. Wait, why can't you find a job? That doesn't make sense. You should be able to find a job. What? You're not allowed to work? That doesn't make any sense. You should be allowed to work. Like." You're illegal? How are you illegal? There's a war in your country. You can't stay there. Like she doesn't understand, right? And that was the case for a lot of people. Like I don't want to single out this one person and shit on them, but that was the case for a lot of people. They just have no idea.
But it comes from a place of like, well, that makes that like this is wrong.
Yeah, in a sense, that's exactly. Like a good-hearted way to approach
precisely.
it.
And that's what I was thinking that people were like.
Yeah,
but they would know. Yeah, okay, I see.
Oh, they don't know. They
Yeah.
really don't know. And it's the same here. Like in the UK, like people have no not even middle class people. I'm talking like, I don't know if you want to say lower middle class, whatever that means. The gulf of understanding between like lower middle class people and like very, very working class, or we can say like the underclass or whatever you want to call them, that gulf is so astounding to me. It really is. Like, actually, no, I'm going to cut what I'm going to say next because it's personal about us. Yeah. But like, for example, like with right?
I was about to say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like with all of my white English friends, like they don't know a single refugee.
Yeah.
Like they know Home Office bad, but they don't know how Home Office bad or how bad or.
But they
like
know it's
bad.
It's the whole articulation thing again.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. As we were saying, like what's going on in neighborhoods like Dindang is completely overlooked. As far as I'm aware, it's completely overlooked. It's not being understood. It's not being reported on. It's not. This is okay, and this leads me on to a deeper point. That is why Thalugaz have been approached with apprehension,
right,
cautiousness, and kind of nervousness, even by other protest groups, right, and I think that's because, you know, Thalugaz are very violent with the police. They approach the police with violence.
In the way that the police would approach them, if anything.
Yeah, in the way the police would approach them. But I feel like those other protest groups don't understand why, and this is, we're talking protest groups, don't understand why these people would be so angry with the police, because they don't understand what he said. Like, it's what they're living in a corrupt micro police state, right? And let's pull on another quote here because I think it's important.
Because like your interfacing with the police will be different to their interfacing with the police. Will be different to their interfacing.
Oh, absolutely.
To their interfacing.
There's Hold on, can I just do this bit?
Yeah, go proceed.
I said, in what ways are you not represented by the other protest groups? I'll do a quote here. He said, "They are middle-class intellectuals. We are not intellectuals. We're working class. There's a gap there. They have this concept about fighting the police, that they wait for the police to strike first and then they respond. For us, we are being assaulted by the police our whole lives. They have always struck first. They treat us like shit. This is our justification. The whole structure of the police and the state is assaulting. How can you say that we have to wait for them to hurt us first? They've been assaulting us our whole lives and nobody cares or listens. For us, this is the only way to express ourselves, to have our voices heard. We've been completely excluded from society, but people need to know we exist." Right?
Yeah, it is again.
But I think that says what we're trying to say. That says it way better.
Yeah, and you know, people won't necessarily agree with this kind of stance on the violence, but they have to at least understand it, right?
Zizek'ian concept of violence. Isn't it?
You have to at least understand it, surely. You know, like.
I don't know. I don't know if people do.
But that's just empathy,
I think people would argue that, you know, if you're approaching the police with violence, if you're approaching the state with violence, it looks like if they give in to you, then it's like violence works, and they're not going to let that precedent be set, right?
Okay.
I think that's what their argument would be. So there's like another little bit on the end of that quote that I want to read. He basically said, like, you know, having said that, everyone's welcome to join us. He says, but other protest groups are hesitant. It's not like they've been hostile to us, but they keep saying, like, let's wait and see. I think I know why. It's a class thing. Frankly, a lot of middle-class people in the protest just can't understand us. They can't empathize with us. They just don't know. So,
that links back to that, yeah.
Yeah, like, I think he understands it. What we're saying a lot better than we do, to be honest.
We don't know what we're talking about.
To be fair to Free Youth, our friends at Free Youth, I want to say, like, I have spoken to them about Thalugaz, and they are quite open to working with them. Nothing's happened yet. And also, Free Youth are working with the Sahapab Rider, the union riders, and, you know, credit to them for reaching out to that group. And we should probably mention them a little bit, actually.
Union Rider.
Because we also did an interview with the head, or one of the lead coordinators.
Yeah, that's right.
Of the the riders union, and I think this does kind of connect, right? Because as we said, being
the gig economy considers to be part of the sort of the super exploitation.
that we're talking about. Yeah, like the union riders are an interesting group. So it's a collective of all of the different delivery companies. So Lineman, Food Panda, Lala Move. I think they're doing Grab now as well. I'm not sure. They're trying to kind of unionize these gig economy workers, which has a weird place in the entire legislature, because legally they're freelance workers, legally they're petty bourgeoisie or whatever you want to fucking call them, but obviously they're not really. So legally they can't unionize under Thai law, which I mean that's funny because in my opinion, like that's actually a benefit. Like you don't want to be a state-backed union. But then when we were talking to the guy in it, he said like, oh no, we do want to be legally recognized, which is kind of interesting.
I mean, there's more recourse for working in through the system. You could argue. I mean,
you could.
You do want to be a state-backed union in a state that actually likes unions. So, yeah.
This ain't a state that likes unions.
Exactly.
So whatever.
Well, yeah. If anyone knows anything about Thai labor laws, then
yeah. But I mean, ultimately, all power to them. It's very impressive
for sure.
what they're doing. I feel like maybe these are like the dual power approach. I don't know, whatever you want to fucking call it. But
could be.
For this category of workers, of people we're talking about, which is like, one, you try to unionize, you try to organize in the workplace.
Yeah.
And the other one is, you fight the state.
Yeah.
And those things aren't happening exactly, by the same group, but it is interesting and nice to see that they are both happening at the same time, at least.
Because you mentioned, right, like within the underclass, then there's people who have jobs and people who don't have jobs. And so if you have jobs, well, you can go through the whole, unionizing the workplace, create solidarity in that way. But if you don't, well, then there's no way for that sort of
to push it further.
Is the word anger? Is the word anger? Is the word anger?
Well, I don't know what you're saying.
Alienation. What is the emotion that arises from being exploited? There is no direction for that to go. There's no way for that alienation to go other than through this
fighting the state, fighting the police. Yeah,
as opposed to if you had a job, you could go through a few channels for it. Yeah.
I think a lot of these people a lot of them are the same people. And it's not like the people in Din just straight up aren't working and are totally unemployed. Like they are working, hustling here and there, but they're not got, steady wage labor jobs by any means. To kind of wrap it up a bit, I asked them, how do you move this movement forward? Because frankly, you can go out in the streets and fight the police as much as you want, but there is a question of, that's, you're not gonna, I don't know, change the government that way, probably. Let's be honest. You can
fight them a lot, but you can't, if you don't overturn them somehow, then
or if you don't have like a political plan to overturn them,
that's
right?
also probably a point.
And to replace them with something else, like it does require a kind of vision. Yeah. And to be fair to the guy who we spoke to, like as far as he's very much saying, this is all very organic and it is quite chaotic and it's early days and stuff like that. I think they are coming up with it as we go along. I mean, he said, I'll pull out the quote again. He said, the short-term plan is just to grow and express ourselves, to create a leftist space for people like us in the protests. This bit was really interesting. He said, we don't use the three finger salute. We use the clenched fist. I like that.
That's pretty basic.
Beyond that, we need to talk, have meetings, organize more deeply. Right now, we're collecting data and starting to make plans, but it's very early days and we need more support.
I think that's exactly what needs to happen. It is because you can't, because there is momentum in terms of the protest movement, but that momentum is in a very liberal trajectory. But with the...
Do you think?
Well... Let me. So I think that the momentum in Thai politics has been going in one direction. I won't describe the direction, but in order to take a left turn, if you will, right, you need to do I don't know. There's a bad metaphor here, but you have to grow that space, like the guy mentions. You have to cultivate a sense of left-wing thinking, which is being provoked and being stoked by, free youth. And then hopefully with some of the academics we know, creating that new generation of students thinking in a more Marxist left-wing socialist sense, anti-capitalist sense, as a better catch-all term.
To our anarchist comrades at Thalugaz.
Yeah. So, that I think that what he's described, although not necessarily high in like thinking ahead, we can't think ahead, because if we can't figure out, we have to create the conditions in order to be able to think ahead. If you see what I'm saying.
Yeah, no, I do. And I also want to give a shout out to another group that's not a protest group that's doing that, which is Thalugaz, who are that mutual aid group.
Taking care of ourselves.
In Bangkok. I mean, they're amazing, and shout out to comrade, because I mean, I shouldn't name people who are involved in it, but they're doing really incredible work in terms of the workers' camps. And making actual really effective mutual aid structure. And I wish I could talk about it more, but I'm not allowed. But like, they are almost like setting up a parallel state apparatus to the Thai government, which is built on mutual aid, and it's really amazing. And if there is any way to harness, because there's kind of like 3 sections of the movement that we like, or maybe even 4. And we're going to talk about this in a future episode. But like, there's kind of 4 sections of the Thai protest movement that I do really like. I like Thalugaz, absolutely. I like their front-footedness. I like their energy, right? So there's that.
Their vibes.
Thalugaz, I like how fucking effective they are. And how they're actually doing mutual aid, how they're actually helping people, which is really nice. Free Youth, I like how they've introduced this kind of very anti-capitalist element to the movement. And also Dao Din. I like Dao Din's localism. I think they do localism in a very good way. I think they help people to articulate what they need within their own communities and try and facilitate them, the local communities, taking care of themselves. Again. Without the Thai government having to be this kind of almighty power that you kind of beg for a few crumbs, that like Dao Din are quite front-footed on that, and I do like that a lot.
Do you reckon?
So go on.
In addition to that, the 5th Voltron, the 5th thing to complete Voltron, would it be like maybe some of the unions, the new unions that are forming? Right.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. Like Sahapab Radar as well.
So there is a Voltron of Thai left-wing, Thai radical politics now. This is great.
Yeah, I mean, kind of quietly optimistic times, eh?
Yeah, I'm happy. I was so much sadder like 5 months ago when things weren't looking so good.
Man, things were bleak 5 months ago. I mean, we could go back into another kind of quiet period, but
this is true. It's an ebb.
Ebbs and flows. Right, should we call it a day?
Yeah, I think everyone's heard us ramble a bit.
All right, folks. Sorry, this one was a little bit of a rambly one. It's kind of we got a lot. We got to
get back into the swing of things. We're getting back into the swing of things. Yeah, we got to get back into the
swing of things.
Yeah.
Also, I should say a little bit of admin. We're going to be taking a little break, not sabbatical, but we're going to be a bit slower releasing episodes for maybe the next month.
Some
things will absolutely. Yes, care time. Things absolutely will pick up in October, but both dindeng.com and the podcast are going to just slow down for a month, and then we will absolutely spike.
We need to rejuvenate our forces and recharge our cheese.
We do.
Our chi
we need to align those chakras.
Yeah, that's the other one.
Yeah.
Oh, and also, please do visit dindang.com/support. Give what you can.
And give us money.
Yeah, well,
lots of it.
Fine, you can phrase it like that, or you can phrase it, yeah.
Nah.
But please, I need to see Gabriel get paid.
That would be nice. Yeah. yeah, so give us money, and you know what? If you give us money, you get more stuff. You get more content.
Yeah, this is true. Nothing exclusive because
nothing exclusive.
we can't
do that shit.
We can't overwork ourselves, and also that's kind of against our ethos.
I'm kind of against exclusive.
Exactly. That's against our ethos.
So we copy left as well. So like, how are we gonna be doing like exclusive content?
This is true. This is true.
All right, folks. So I'll put some decent music on the outro and catch you soon.
Yeah, Karawan Trap Remix.
บุษบาเริ่มมาทาราเล่นลมจาลาลีชื่นชมและสุขสมอำไพบุษราคำนวลเย้ายวนใจรำมานาโบก